Can you achieve extraordinary results while making the world a better place? I'm Bruce Temkin, and together we'll explore how. Welcome to Humanity at Scale, Redefining Leadership podcast. Join me as I speak with visionary leaders and top experts to uncover the secrets of humanity-centric leadership. Ready to rethink leadership? Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back. Leadership often takes shape in the office, focused on strategy, metrics, and big picture decisions. But the heartbeat of humanity-centric leadership lies on the ground, where stories are told, challenges are faced, and aspirations take root. How can leaders bridge these two perspectives to create organizations defined by connection, purpose, and meaningful impact? Today, I'm thrilled to explore this question with Nikki Kresse, Chief Experience and People Officer at Lifespace Communities. Nikki is a transformational leader with an extraordinary career spanning talent strategy, culture reinvention, and enterprise growth across industries like healthcare, hospitality, and senior living. At Lifespace Communities, Nikki leads initiatives that touch the lives of thousands of residents and team members, bringing together strategic vision and the realities of daily life. Her leadership is grounded in purpose, empathy, and a commitment to creating environments where people, not just organizations, can truly thrive. Welcome to the podcast, Nikki.
Thank you, Bruce. I'm very excited to be joining you today.
It's always great to see you.
Yes.
Yes. So let's jump in because some of our listeners may not be familiar with the company and what it does. So can you give us an overview of what Lifespace Communities does and your role as Chief Experience and People Officer?
Sure. Lifespace Communities owns and operates CCRCs, which are Continuum Care Retirement Communities. I'd really liken our business to a cruise ship on land in senior living. We've got 4 distinct businesses in our business. So residents come in typically into independent living, and then they have the opportunity to access the continuum of care all the way through end of life. And so that makes our business very unique and very complex. The 4 areas of the business are first around long-term care insurance. So when a resident comes in and purchases and secures their home in independent living, they put down a large entrance fee. And then past that, they have a monthly fee that's structured each month. And regardless of the level of healthcare needs, those costs stay consistent. So that's that long-term care piece. Then we have hospitality, because much like a cruise ship, we have bars and restaurants and activities and
Wait a minute. Do you have to be in senior living to go? You're painting this picture of a wonderful environment for all of us.
It really is. It's a thriving, vibrant environment. And many folks talk about it almost as if, you're going back to your college days. So we also offer health care. That's a very significant portion of our business. And then lastly, we own and maintain all the real estate that we sit on.
Wow. That's a pretty lots of things going on. What's your role in all of that?
Yeah. So I lead human resources, which is the people part of my title. And then I also lead resident and customer experience, and then also the communications functions across the enterprise. And so really responsible for anything from team member all the way through our residents and then future and prospective customers.
So you focus on people. People having a great time in the cruise ship that never goes on the water.
Exactly.
It'd be fun to get to know a little bit more about sort of your background. Can you walk us through your career journey leading up to this particular role?
Sure. So early in my career, I started in operations And so that's really in my blood. And you see that through and through. And often people make a comment that I'm not a typical HR person when I was just exclusively focused on HR. And that's really because my career started in operations, and I'm always first a business leader. And considering that, and then thinking about how do we support talent and how do we also support our customers through that. Then I moved into my HR career fairly quick. And most of my foundational, HR career was developed at Michael's Arts and Crafts stores. And, when I joined the company, we were a public company. Then we moved to private equity, and Bain and Blackstone owned us. And then we went public again. And, so I had lots of different roles. I started in training, went into recruiting, and then I led HR in several different functions. But Michael's was a great foundational HR learning ground. I really learned how to adapt and evolve constantly because our business was evolving so much. We were very lean and scrappy. So I learned how to build and also optimize so that we could scale things and do that with limited resources. I learned to be a working leader, which has benefited me even today. And I also learned how to build strong succession plans. We are very effective in building strong teams and leadership teams, and that's where I really honed that skill. Then I moved to G6, where I led HR and total rewards. We were owned by Blackstone, and the hospitality company is best known as Motel 6 and Studio 6. And we were really tasked with transforming that business from an owner operator into a franchisor. And so really developed a lot, certainly in my business acumen and so forth. But that was really probably when I evolved the most in just growing more from a leadership standpoint and developing a greater sense of empathy and connectedness with people. You become more comfortable in your skin as you grow as a leader. And I think just feeling comfortable being vulnerable and looking for ways to connect with people in different ways rather than just, climbing the corporate ladder, if you will. And then now I'm at Lifespace, and this has been a great experience where I've been able to just step into a space that serves such an incredible group of people and really step in to help support in developing the resident experience and also the team member experience.
Fantastic. And I would also say it sounds like Michael's was not only a pivotal in bringing you your career and some of the ways you look at leadership now, you probably have brought some of that arts and crafts along with you into the living centers, right? There's probably a Michael's infusion somewhere along the line in there.
Exactly. I'm not the craftiest, but I do have a strong appreciation for it. And I know the unique aisles you need to go down in Michael's to find every item that you could possibly think of.
Nice. So you have a pretty diverse background in terms of like different types of companies that you've been with, and you've been working for more than 20 years in operations and human resources. So if you think about it, how has your view of what effective leadership is evolved over that time?
Yeah. Early in my career, I think I was very focused on more directing versus empowering. And, I just young and immature in my leadership skills, I felt like, strong leaders need to be the experts and the person with the answers and making the decisions. But what I've really learned over time and through that starting point is that the best leaders don't just drive execution. They really create clarity. They empower their teams, and they create an environment where people are enabled to own the work. And so, I've had an evolution. So it was from directing to empowering. I would say next was, how do you shift from leading the work to leading people? And, having that operator's mindset, you're very focused on process and performance and results. And as I moved from Michael's to G6, I saw that, really results are a byproduct of engaged and motivated teams. And I think that I've refined that over time in just how I connect and inspire and invest in people. And then, going from that kind of early set standpoint of trying to kind of control and manage teams, now it's about how can you become more curious and look for new ways of thinking and challenging your teams to learn and grow and think about things different. So I think that's by kind of stepping back and giving your teams space to grow and learn and evolve and contribute, and not always being the answer person, but the person that sets the stage to allow others to flourish.
Oh, I love that. I love that. You talk a lot about creating the space to learn and vulnerability. I'm wondering if you have any recommendations for leaders, because sometimes it's difficult to showcase that you are a strong leader while simultaneously allowing that vulnerability. Any thoughts on what you've learned or advice for leaders on how to make sure that they balance the two? Or is it a balance, or you just always be vulnerable?
Yeah. I once thought having kind of real command and control and so forth of my own, just what I portrayed or did not portray was a sign of confidence and certainty. But I've actually found that stepping into those spaces of vulnerability are important. And what's interesting is we're on a journey right now of continuing to evolve our culture at Lifespace. And we've recently talked about growth mindset and how can a growth mindset kind of open up and unlock doors for innovation and continuous improvement. And one of the things that I've been reading myself on this is I've realized the areas where I had a fixed mindset and where I wasn't open to hearing different perspectives, or I was mired in my view. And I think one thing I real time have been learning is saying that, verbalizing that for the leadership team and saying, hey, I've been in a fixed mindset at times. And some of these reflection points have provided me an opportunity around how I need to be different. And I think it's about being, vulnerability isn't about breaking down and getting emotional with people. I think it's about, being human. We're all human, and we all have things we're working on, and being honest and open about that.
Yeah, I love that. It's a lot of flavor of intentionality. Levy said, you step into vulnerability. Just that phrase is so sort of eye-opening about, you have to think that you aren't at the moment, and you have to decide to be vulnerable.
Yes.
And the same way that you identified places where you had fixed mindsets, right? It's really powerful to be intentional and recognize you're not even perfect. Cool. So I'd love to sort of shift gears and start talking a little bit about your current role.
Sure.
And when we first spoke, I was just amazed by what you did when you took on your new role. So you recently took on responsibility for customer experience. You had the other roles before that. And to get yourself ready, you spent a month living in the senior living communities as part of your preparation. But after you're speaking now, I don't know whether you did that because it's just a great place to go and it's like being on a cruise for a month. I don't think that's why you did it, but I think you did it. But can you share what that experience taught you, especially any unexpected insights or surprises?
Yeah. So it was an incredible experience. And it was one of, like, when you look back in your past and you say, what were the moments in my life that had like a significant impact on me? This is one of them. And so I had an opportunity to live in 4 of our communities, and I would show up early in the morning, and then I would basically be a resident. And through that, I would first go into independent living, and I would just engage in meals and activities, and then I'd sleep in that level of living, and then I'd move to the next level of living. So I had an opportunity to experience independent living, assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing. And in each of those, sleep in those areas and interact with our residents and our team members. And I first and foremost want to say that I had so much respect for our team members and just their interaction and care and support of our residents every day. It was so heartwarming to see and experience that. As it relates to lessons and kind of unexpected insights, one of them was, I'm thinking about the experience and how can we, our biggest competitor is the home, right? Many people want to age in place. And as I'm thinking about my role, I'm thinking about how do we understand what a customer would need and how do we extend our business into the home? How do we differentiate and how do we diversify? And, but as I was sitting there in the community, I realized, what's most important is we've got to get the basics right first. And it's easy to want to innovate and transform, but if you're not doing the basics, it's almost pointless to layer things on top of that. And we often talk about delivering personalized experiences. And it just struck me how important it is that you do the basics and then you add those additional layers of personalization to that, or you embed and kind of start from scratch and build those things to work seamlessly together. So that was one of the first. The second thing that really stood out for me was that small moments matter. And, you go in thinking there's big operational service delivery, care model type things that you're going to learn about. But what really struck me is the things that resonated most with our residents was their interactions with our team members.
I love the fact that when you go and embed yourself in an environment, you get a point of view that's completely different than you get from head office. There's an old story from an IDEO redesigning hospitals where someone asked, what are we going to do to improve patient experience? And the IDEO designers came and said, I think the first thing you need to do is paint your ceilings. And people are going, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And he said, I went to your hospitals and laid down like I was one of your patients. And there is the most gloomy, disgusting, dirty ceilings that they have to look at all the time. Something that you never would think about unless you put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah.
So,
And I had a prime example, when I was in skilled nursing, I had observed that there were residents in skilled nursing that were kind of I didn't know if they were wandering up and down the hall, like looking for their room or what was happening. And then I sat down in a wheelchair and started wheeling around. And I realized the nameplates of our residents that we were caring for were too high to read to know which room was theirs. And so just similar to what you're talking about, right?
yeah, it's those moments of seeing what they are like, what their life is, what they see. I mean, truly seeing it through their eyes. It's cool.
Yeah.
Well, all of this was getting you ready for the resident experience, taking on responsibility for that. And I think resident experience certainly seems to be central to Lifespace mission, right? How does it shape the company's overall strategy and its positioning in the senior living industry?
Yeah. So, we've really called out within our strategy, and as we've thought about the future, that the way that we'll differentiate is through through experience. And it's not just kind of the resident experience, but it's also our customer experience. And so we've got a lead in that. Senior living is a commodity. And the only way to differentiate is by the experience that you provide. It's got to be more than just amenities and services. And so we've distinctly defined our strategy around that. And we've long had a belief that when you have a strong team member experience, that drives a great customer experience. And, but two of our strategic pillars are focused on, number one, team member experience. And the second strategic pillar is on our customer journey. And, so we're very focused on it. And, all of our decisions are now being kind of oriented around first the voice of our customer, understanding what their needs are, and ensuring that we're providing services and products and offerings that meet those needs. And then also including and involving them in how we build those out as well.
Great. So it sounds like the resident experience is embedded in how leadership thinks about running the company. But let me test that, because in many organizations, leaders struggle to get the senior executive team to put the right energy and focus on customer or resident experience. What's been your experience in this new role, seeing the support from your peers and the senior leaders across the organization?
Yeah, I think there's a natural connection point. And I've really benefited from a very supportive executive team. Also, our board is very aligned around the experience. And in fact, we're all very involved in and spend time in our communities listening to our customer. And so it is an aligned focus and passion for all of us. So your guess is correct. We are very, very focused on the experience, and I don't feel like I have a lot of uphill struggles at the moment. But we're just now starting to really embed ourselves in intentionality as it relates to focusing on the resident experience.
That's a great point, because there are and I've worked with organizations that are culturally pro-customer, right? Whether they're credit unions or healthcare facilities, where they're just naturally, but that doesn't mean they're intentionally, right? Yeah. So day-to-day decisions get made and operations happen that aren't necessarily consistent with the desire to have really
Right.
good experience. Sound like that's the bridge that you're taking on now, not trying to get people
Absolutely.
convinced it's important, but making it intentional in how they operate.
Yeah. And an everyday and at the forefront of their mind every day in the work that they do. Because things can get repetitive and, it's got to be a top of mind and a continual focus.
Great. Well, a few minutes ago, you talked about that link between team member experience and resident experience, and you saw it firsthand when you were visiting yourself. That connection, recognize the name. It's interesting. On your website, you refer to team members as dragon slayers, empowering them to go above and beyond for residents. How do you ensure that this philosophy translates into daily employee behavior and engagement across the organization?
Yeah. So I would, I'm going to go back just quickly on another fundamental learning on my time in the communities is just our team members are the experience. I mean, if you took the talent out of the community, there would be no experience. And I think
there'd be buildings and arts and crafts supplies that just aren't getting used.
Yes. And I went in thinking about customer experience as resident focused, but I really left knowing it's just as much about our team member experience. And engaged team members create engaged residents. And the best communities weren't just well run. They had teams that felt empowered and had ownership and pride in making them special. And so I truly believe, going back to your question about empowering our teams to be kind of go above and beyond for our residents, that the number one way that we've ensured that is connecting them to the mission. And a few years back, we, rebuilt our vision and our mission. And our mission is to create communities where people are empowered to live their aspirations. And our vision is about being a recognized innovator that creates personalized experiences where each person thrives. And then we created our values, and our values I use the word intentional a lot because I think it's important. If you're going to do something, you've got to do it with intention and you've got to do it right. And, the uniqueness about our values is they're not just words that hang on a wall. We ask our team members on our very best day, how do we show up? We ask every team member that. And we got lots of responses, and we synthesized those responses, and they naturally formed out into our values. And then we described and created behaviors underneath those values that clearly describe how we show up and how we behave and how we do our work and deliver to our resident and to one another. And that right there has provided connective tissue for our team members to understand how to deliver on the mission. Sometimes there's so much that occurs between the strategy down to then what the hourly worker actually does, and it's hard to translate those things. What we've really focused on is helping every team member know what the mission is and how they deliver on that mission, which is through living the values. And every one of those values and behaviors are embedded in every aspect of our talent management, from how we hire, how we assess, the performance expectations, to everything we do.
So it's interesting. I sometimes think about two opposing ways to lead talent, and they're not necessarily opposing, but it helps me to think about them separately. One way is that we give people a view of where we want to go and we empower them to get there. The other way is that we decompose what we want to do down into sometimes mission, values, and behaviors where we are much more about trying to ensure that they follow a prescribed model to get where we want to go. Now, you talked about empowerment early on, empowerment being important, but then you also talked about prescribing behaviors that are aligned with the values. How do you reconcile empowerment and behavioral descriptions?
Yes, absolutely. So that's where we're also really teasing out, and we have behaviors around how do you take on more of a growth mindset? How are you in a spot where you can deliver? So number one, it starts with leaders. Leaders have to live the values, and they have to lead from a place of growth, and they have to allow team members to be in a place where they can be empowered and learn through just continuing through that effort and struggle of getting better and better, that in time will hit the mark. And so first, leaders have to create the environment. If a leader isn't creating the right kind of environment, then it fails. And what we're going through that growth, we haven't mastered it, but we're really helping shape our leadership to be in a spot to model the behavior and to be asking the right kinds of questions and provoking the right kinds of conversations to allow people to talk about what they learned out of taking acceptable risk. So the other thing is we've embedded behaviors that exhibit growth mindset. We're looking at adding those pieces in. We started at first, and there are definitely behaviors that show that, but we realized some gaps. So we're going back through and adding those in so that we create an environment that opens up opportunity where people seek out feedback or things where we're seeing kind of log jams occur in the current thinking, or folks not quite feeling empowered to step into the gap.
Yeah, I love that. So the behaviors are not just aligned with jobs to be done, but they're also aligned with showcasing things like empowerment and initiative.
Yes.
Awesome. While we're talking about people, the whole industry of care professionals is under stress, right? The senior living industry, like many others, face ongoing challenges like staffing shortage and employee burnout, right? How has Lifespace tackled these issues, and what strategies have been most effective along the way?
Yeah, I think, first of all, similar to what I said around the customer experience or the resident experience, you got to do the basics right as an organization. So you've got to pay a fair wage. You have to have a good environment for people to work in. Those are important. And I know when I first stepped into the business, it was right during COVID, and think about how difficult it was to find caregivers, and it was highly competitive. Many people left the space. Some moved into traveling roles, and it was hard to find talent. And so we had to first look at how do we need to competitively position ourselves as an organization, just in the basics. And so that was our first step. The next thing is we identified, how do we start to improve the environment? So we built out a very clear listening strategy, and we started doing regular surveys with our team members. We do them twice a year. And we don't just survey. We have very active listening sessions after the engagement survey. Because the survey is like reading the news, right? It just only tells you so much. And so we sat down with teams And we have discussion about let's unpack this. What are the things that are working well? What can we do better? And we actively engage our teams in the solutioning, because when people are connected to the solution and own it, it drives their engagement. It drives their purpose and connection. And that was a notable turn. The next thing that we did is we built out our employee value proposition and really teased out, how do we differentiate? Because I mentioned earlier, senior living's a commodity. And at the heart of it, if I'm an individual, I can care give anywhere, right? If I'm a nurse, I could be a nurse in many different environments. But why Lifespace? And in fact, I'm wearing my t-shirt, Our Space. This is our brand, our employer brand. And so when we did this work, we learned that the way we differentiate is when individuals think about, I think individuals who work in our environment are innately just born with DNA to care, right? They just have it in their bones. But it's hard to find livelihood and a job that just allows you to do that without limits, right? And I think, Bruce, coming out of so much change and evolution, people are looking for ways to do good and for purpose and meaning beyond just the transactional day to day.
That's awesome. I mean, a lot of things I talk about and look at are tied with purpose, right? Yep. The ability to have purpose, to connect with purpose is a powerful thing. Now, for your organization, for Our Place, did you find that the connection to purpose actually aided in lowering burnout relative to, a nurse who might work in another environment? Do you have any measurements? Have you tracked anything to show your level of burnout as being favorable?
Yeah. So in the time that we've really put just notable focus on the team member experience, we have seen our turnover's gone down almost 30 points. Our retention has increased the opposite direction. Our engagement right now is at the global 90th for several industry composite. So we have seen outcomes. And what's amazing is, I mentioned before, we've been focused around connecting our team members to kind of the work. And we have a balanced scorecard that has team member, customer, occupancy, and financial. That's how our balanced scorecard is lined up. And we have seen when communities invest and are very focused and leverage these tools to drive these metrics, we're seeing now every single one of those components of our balanced scorecard in that order light up, right? Because we've had tremendous team member results. And now we have great resident results. Our NPS is exceptional. We're at 53 right now and continuing to improve. And so I'm very proud of the results that we've had so far.
Awesome. Well, I think we'll leave sort of the main set of questions with that, with talk about pride of the connection you're doing between the team member, the resident, the occupancy, and the operations. It's wonderful. So I do have a few closing questions I'd like to get to you. The first is, as you look ahead, what's one leadership skill you believe will be essential for leaders to thrive in the future?
I really think that adaptive leadership is going to be a pretty defining skill for leaders to thrive. Because the ability to navigate uncertainty and embrace change and just continuously learn is what's really going to separate those who react to those who lead. And great leaders are going to need to stay curious and not certain, but just asking the right questions and not assuming that they have all the answers.
Sounds like they're going to have to be intentionally vulnerable, as we talked about earlier.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's great. Okay. Next question. If you could wave a magic wand, I give all my guests this power for limited use, just for the moment you're here. You get a magic wand to make organizations more humanity-centric. What's the first thing you'd change and why?
Yeah, I mentioned my time in the communities having such an impactful kind of pivot point for me. It would be to ensure that leaders at every level are really deeply connected to the daily experiences of their people. And I think too often decisions are made from a distance and in either boardrooms or in corporate offices or support centers and through analytics and policies.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Nikki. That's been wonderful.
Thank you, Bruce. I appreciate you having me today.
That's been great. Well, everyone, I hope you found my conversation with Nikki insightful and inspiring. If you enjoyed it, I'd love for you to share it with others and subscribe to the podcast for more great discussions. Now, let's dive into the after show, a segment where I reflect on the key takeaways from the episode and share additional thoughts and insights. Welcome to the after show, where I'll share some thoughts about my discussion with Nikki Kresse. Wow, what an incredible conversation. Nikki's insights into leadership, experience management, and the power of intentionality were inspiring and thought-provoking. Let's dive into some key takeaways. The first takeaway is that leadership is about creating space, not just driving execution. Nikki's leadership journey from operations to HR to experience management highlights an evolution in how she approaches leadership. Early on, leadership meant directing and controlling. Over time, she recognized the most effective leaders create clarity, empower their teams, and foster environments where others can thrive. This reminds me of Satya Nadella's transformation of Microsoft. Instead of focusing on rigid execution, he championed a growth mindset, encouraging curiosity, adaptability, and openness to learning. This cultural shift didn't just revitalize Microsoft, it transformed it. Similarly, Nikki's journey included stepping into vulnerability, recognizing her own fixed mindsets, and making intentional efforts to grow as a leader. It's a powerful reminder that leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about creating the conditions for others to flourish. The second takeaway is that immersion brings insights, and leadership from the ground up is powerful. One of the most striking moments from our discussion was Nikki's decision to spend a month living in senior communities. She didn't just observe, she fully immersed herself in the daily lives of the residents and staff. This approach reminded me of a classic IDEO case study on hospital design. Researchers spent hours lying in hospital beds to understand the patient experience. Their biggest insight? Patients spent most of their time staring at ugly, neglected ceilings, something no executive had noticed from the boardroom. Nikki's version of this was realizing that resident nameplates were positioned too high for wheelchair users to read. Small details like this profoundly shape everyday experiences. Leaders who don't immerse themselves in the realities of their employees and customers risk missing these vital insights. So ask yourself, when was the last time you stepped out of your office and truly experienced your organization from the ground up? The best decisions come from firsthand understanding, not secondhand reports. The third takeaway is that experience is a human-centric competitive advantage. In the commodity market for senior living, Nikki's team recognized that the key differentiator is their experience. For Lifespace Communities, Creating an exceptional resident experience starts with an engaged and empowered team. Their Dragon Slayer culture encourages employees to go above and beyond, creating meaningful moments for connections with residents. This philosophy extends beyond senior living. Consider Ritz-Carlton's legendary guest service. Employees are given up to $2,000 in discretionary funds to create unforgettable guest experiences. Why? Because empowered employees transform small moments into extraordinary ones. As Nikki pointed out, this approach not only improves customer experience, but drives real business results, such as higher occupancy and financial growth. It aligns perfectly with my employee engagement virtuous cycle. Engaged employees create better customer experience, which builds loyalty and drives financial success. So ask yourself, what are you doing in your organization to kickstart this virtuous cycle? The final point I'll make is that purpose reduces burnout and drives retention. One of the most remarkable stats Nikki shared was that Lifespace reduced turnover by 30 points and significantly improved retention and engagement. The secret? Connecting employees to purpose. Purpose isn't just a feel-good concept, it's a performance driver. Research consistently shows that employees who feel connected to purpose are more resilient, engaged, and less likely to experience burnout. Lifespace's Our Space initiative gives team members a clear sense of identity and ownership in the company's mission. The takeaway? Leaders can't expect employees to engage on their own. It's your job to actively create environments where purpose is woven into the fabric of their work. I'll give you a final thought. One of my favorite moments from the conversation was Nikki's advice to listen without an agenda. Too often, leaders enter conversations already armed with solutions or goals. But true human-centric leadership requires openness and the humility to listen without preconceptions. So I'll leave you with this. Where do you need to listen without an agenda? And where could stepping into vulnerability unlock a deeper connection with your employees, customers, or the broader community? That's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks for tuning in to Humanity at Scale, Redefining Leadership podcast. Remember, true leadership isn't only about achieving short-term results. It's about creating a lasting positive impact on all of the people you touch. Join me next time as we uncover more insights and strategies for humanity-centric leadership. Until then, I'm Bruce Temkin, encouraging you to lead with purpose and empathy and to be the spark that elevates humanity at scale.